Hello, America. Welcome to the Junto Podcast, where we promote the practical applications of critical thinking and bold creativity. I'm your host, Edgar Mills. Thanks for joining us. Hey, America. Thanks for sticking with me. So today we're talking about some hard topics here, hard stuff. Troubled marriage, kids stuck in the middle, alcohol struggles, sexual dalliances, emotional emptiness, relationship that started under less than solid conditions, minimal shared values, mutual selfishness, neither one fully owning your part while busy hammering the other. If any of that sounds familiar, well, please put your critical thinking cap on and take a short journey with me, because this episode's for you. Now, look, I'm not here to judge. Let's get that out straight away. I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to hand out easy anecdotal answers that magically fix everything, or some quick exit strategy. Nope, none of that either. I'm here to talk about work and respect. That's what I'm talking about today. So we're going to look at troubled marriage issues through lenses of psychology, modern doctrine, faith, and then even hedonism. Yeah, and see how that shakes out. And we're going to dig into some, selfishness and maybe even narcissism. And then we're going to look at some documented relationship recoveries, and then the opposite of that is the horrible consequences of some documented failures. And I think ultimately, if you put your critical thinking cap on and you're open-minded, that we're going to come to the same conclusions that most of these hard conversations come to, that the only workable path forward starts with the individual, you working on yourself first and taking individual accountability for your actions. I'm not making that up. That's not my opinion. That's documented study, a wealth of documented study. So first, let's start with respect. What about respect? In a marriage, respect, it's not just superficial politeness or just being kind enough to keep the peace. In healthy couples, it means that you actually admire your spouse, that you value, maybe what they've been through in the past, or maybe what they've accomplished personally or professionally, maybe. Or maybe even just the kind of person they are. Or in some cases, for very tough customers like me, maybe you just admire some small piece of some small personality trait that they have. But there's got to be something there. You got married. So you have respect, and you treat them as an autonomous equal whose boundaries and feelings and differences and everything else all deserve, sincere consideration on your part, whichever part that is. Psychology research is crystal clear on this. Mutual respect is one of the strongest predictors of marital satisfaction, stability, the ability to solve problems, and longevity, without everything turning into a screaming match or one storming off, maybe with ill intent, every time there's a disagreement. When spouses respect each other, disagreements, even if they're slightly heated, disagreements stay about the issue at hand and not about little character assassinations and little jabs. Because those little assassinations and jab, they're just deflection. You're just avoiding the real conversation, the hard conversation. And if you actually have respect for one another, your differences become tolerable. They become something that you navigate and you can live with. You can work around them. They're workable. And then with that respect and with the sort of diversity of thought there, your relationship actually gains resilience with every problem solved together. Excuse me. Every problem solved without a fight is like a little victory, a little learning point, and you can build on that. And without respect, even if you have, residual affection from some initial, raw sexual attraction, whatever drew you to each other, without respect, that stuff eventually transforms into something else. And you start to look ugly to each other. You need respect in a relationship. You need it. John Gottman of the Gottman Institute, couples therapy, marital psychology, the whole works. Decades and decades of research says that respect goes alongside fondness, admiration, and it's the core, of a long-term marriage, marital longevity, marital success. Respect, along with fondness and admiration, that's the nuclear, that's the core of the marriage. Respect has to exist. Contempt is the absolute opposite of respect. And contempt is the single strongest predictor of divorce. Basic human dignity, especially among couples, I'm talking about everybody, it's non-negotiable. Basic human dignity is non-negotiable. Basic baseline level respect. You should have that for everyone. But especially in a marriage, especially in a relationship with somebody you're with every single day. No name calling, petty shit. No deliberate little humiliations, one-upping each other. No treating the other as invalid or worthless. No passive-aggressive little pokes and prods. A deeper respect and that felt sense that your partner is competent and trustworthy, someone worth following, someone that's admirable, somebody worth submitting to. That's hard-earned stuff, and it's hard-earned through consistent, admirable action. Because in a split second, it can all be lost to one little outburst of anger or one little harsh word. It can all be erased and you're back to square one. You don't have to tiptoe around egos. You just have to have a baseline consideration for each other. Well, respect goes hand in hand with trust. Yeah, trust. And, infidelity, broken promises around alcohol, constant criticism, selfishness, physical or emotional neglect. All those things tear down trust and respect. They tear it away. Those are all ugly things. And here's a kind of a simple analogy, and I like it. I think it fits. Your marriage, think of your marriage like a bank account. Yeah. Every day, your comments or your behaviors, they either deposit money or they withdraw money. So in 5 years from now, do you have a little nest egg, a little comfort zone? Or are you in the red, struggling to pay the bills? So Gottman talks about soft startups. Just easing the tone, man. Ease the tone. Come at each other with a soft tone. In the soft startup. Don't start out accusing. Start out with, well, hey, I feel a little overwhelmed when you say this or you do that. I feel a little attacked. And say it in a soft tone. and that's a little deposit into the account there. That's conversational. We can work with that. But on the other hand, rolling your eyes, deep cutting sarcasm, coming at each other with absolutes. You always do this. You never do that. Those things nickel and dime your account, keep you broke. If the relationship started under sort of dubious conditions, say alcohol-fueled frivolity, or you're just trying to get a quick shot of leg, well, true mutual respect was probably very lean in the beginning anyway. If it was ever present, it probably wasn't. And superficial mutual attraction, physical attraction is great. Good sex is great. Emotional convenience is great. But that shit masquerades itself as respect. There's no real respect in there. There's no real respect in there. And all that superficial stuff, as great as it is, it don't last. It's not a foundation. Those things aren't foundational. So in your post-orgasm clarity, and you find that it's kind of empty, well, what do? Well, how do we build genuine respect from this place? Well, you have to, through demonstrated character over time, you have to act and behave and speak honestly. You have to show some level of responsibility, adult responsibility. You two have to come to some sort of mutual shared purpose. Why are we doing what we're doing? And then you have to have consistency in words and in deeds, good people, words and deeds. You can't say one thing and do another. And you can't expect the opposite of your spouse from what you're actually doing yourself. And if you as a couple never built the respect, the incompatibilities just become magnified, painfully obvious. And what follows is the harsh criticism. Without any ownership, you criticize each other without any self-reflection, without any ownership. And this kind of stuff keeps that bank account empty, overdrawn even. And every accusation that ignores your own culpability, and it causes a respect deficit. You go in the hole. That respect is turning into resentment when you don't own your own part of the problem. But in contrast, every moment of genuine accountability earns a little back. And so the cycle continues. The first perspective we're going to examine here is the hedonistic perspective. This is, by definition, somewhat selfish. I do what I want because it feels good to me, without regard for anyone else. This is the antithesis of relationship. And from this perspective, it treats the partner, well, as a source of physical pleasure, sure, or an emotional punching bag, somebody for you to come home and just dump on, instead of somebody who's a co-equal, loved, and respected partner. And alcohol and sexual indiscretions become understandable to you in your mind, even justifiable in your own selfishness, because you look at it as short-term relief from all the stress and emptiness that you're feeling. So you justify these things. You justify it because it's what I want. And whatever shared values you may have, or any responsibility you may feel to your spouse, it doesn't matter to you because the immediate hit is strong enough that that it takes precedence over your spouse. Yeah. Alcohol is powerful. Drugs are powerful. Sex is powerful. And it can get you off azimuth easily. And this just reeks, it carries the stench of selfishness. And that's what it is, selfishness. And I know these things, folks, from study, sure, from living it too. And from here, in this hedonistic me, every interaction is scored against personal gain. And if you see no personal gain, then you cut away from it. And this creates in the other person the exact harsh criticism and avoidance of responsibility that we're talking about. Because accountability to you feels like a cost that you're not willing to pay because you don't see an immediate payoff, an immediate result. So you're just simply not willing to pay the cost. Whatever the time and the humility. Is this the right way? Well, if you think it is, you're at least 50% of the problem, if not more. This is not the way, folks. This is not the way. Now, the next perspective we're going to examine here a little bit is the faith-based perspective. Now, I happen to be a Christian. You can probably apply this to any faith anyway. But even from a faith perspective, we have free will to do what we choose to do. So, and that is exactly the Christian way, is that you're meant to have free will so that you can then choose to follow Christ. You're not compelled to. No. This ain't Sharia law. You can choose to or not to. So in our free will, keep that in mind. We have the free will. And the institution of marriage is meant to be one of mutual self-giving, mutual sacrifice that sort of mirrors the love of Christ, right? That's what the institution of marriage is meant to be from a Christian perspective. And Ephesians 5 lays it all out for us in the Bible. Ephesians 5 lays it all out for us. Very clearly, very unambiguously. But again, God gave us free will. And that means that one spouse cannot compel another spouse to change, or even to love, or even to give a shit about the relationship. You can't compel another to do this. You can try, but they have the free will that has to be chosen from themselves, for themselves. Because with this free will, like I said, God doesn't override our bad choices. God does provide choice-driven consequences, though. Yeah, we will feel the consequences of our choices, good or bad. So from the faith perspective, the call is to die to yourself, not to demand that the other person meet every unreasonable urge or whim or whatever you think, right? To stroke your emotions or ego. And in this, pride and selfish ambition for whatever your ambitions are chasing, they're big internal barriers that you have to want to overcome. There's your free will part. I can tell you how bad it is. You have to want and make your mind up to overcome those yourself. The goal is humility. Value your spouse above yourself. Genuinely look at their interests. That's the way. That's the path, folks. And you'll find that the cost is really not nearly as much as you thought. You'll find that the return on that investment is exponential. I'm going to read a Bible passage to you, but it relates to, in Philippians 2, verse 3 and 4, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. Good people. You can apply this to any part of your life, any relationship, whether you're at work or out in a social setting or in your house. In fact, more of you apply this out in the wild than you do in your house. You don't have to be a Christian or religious to read these passages and go, yeah, of course. Help people be selfish or selfless. They apply. Those probably apply across religions. They apply secularly. Yeah. Working on yourself means repentance. That's what that means. And whether if it's in a religious context or not, you can repent your ways and the way that you deal with your spouse. If you have the will, if you chose the will to course correct by putting off your old habits and your old patterns and renewing your mind with maybe new information here, maybe new information, and strive for just better behavior. Yes, more Christ-like behavior. And then allow yourself to rely a little more on grace and a little less on your own willpower. Because if we try to go it alone, folks, we're not going to make it. You can be the hardest operator of operators. There is still, at some point in time, where you think, dear Lord, this might be it. Please help me. You work on your own flaws first. You correct your own flaws first, because that's the only sphere of influence God has bestowed upon us. You can't control anyone else. So fix what you can fix. Yeah. Fix what you can fix. And then approach your spouse from a place of humility and not from a place of superiority, not from the high ground, or not from a place of victimhood to where it's, oh, I've suffered so much because of you. Don't approach that way. Well-documented recoveries, and I mean in the tens of thousands of marriages, mostly included some element of faith. and individuals who stopped seeking out their own vindication and instead submitted their hearts to the relationship first. And what they found out was that the relationship, it's salvageable. You fixed 50% of the problem. At least 50% of the problem. Excuse me. Yeah. And then the next perspective we're going to look at, and I saved this one for last, is modern, couples therapy and psychology. And you can look at that as a secular path, if you will. But you can see that as we look at it, we see that it's not purely secular, but modern doctrine, psychological doctrine, they view this as a classic negative cycle, and it's again been documented and studied for decades, hundreds of thousands of cases. Good people, you are not special or unique when it comes to marital problems. It's all been done. It's all been said. So Gottman, who I mentioned earlier, he's got what's called the Four Horsemen. Now, I added Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse because that's what your marriage could be turning into, is an apocalypse. Number 1, criticism. Number 2, defensiveness, always guarded. Number 3 is contempt. And number 4 is stonewalling. These things thrive when there's no respect, or respect has eroded away or never fully established. And the criticism attacks character. That's where you get the name calling and the belittlement. You're not good enough. Why are you so fucked up? And the defensiveness, well, that deflects partial ownership of the problem. You defend everything you do as correct. And contempt, well, I mean, that's fueled by a long brewing, resentment. And that contempt gives you a sense of superiority. A false sense, mind you, but still. And then stonewalling is just simply a withdrawal from the problem. Ignore it, whatever. It may go away, it may not, whatever. You don't share emotion. You don't ask for any. You don't, whatever. If everybody's just sort of by default neutral, then good enough. You ain't gonna give up any emotional weakness, and you ain't gonna share. Stone cold. That just withdraws from participation in the relationship, participation in your own life. The resentment builds when we have needs that go unmet. And any weak ass or half-hearted attempt to sort of repair a problem piecemeal, it falls flat because we're not acknowledging the deeper problems. It's weak. Just trying to smooth over the surface. The foundation's weak. And eventually, one or both of you go into a negative sentiment override. And that's a filter that everything your partner does is filtered through the ugly filter. Everything looks spiteful or malicious. And through this lens, your spouse can do no right. You see no goodness at all. Even on a good day, they're still just, look at this piece of shit. And if you're there, man, that's bad. And ladies and gentlemen, the real fix starts with personal responsibility. Take the responsibility. And the soft startups, the way you address each other. Come at it. Don't come in hot. Come in warm. And take even a small piece of ownership. You don't have to come out into a full-blown confession of all the things you've ever done in your entire life. Take a small piece of ownership. And at least those things, they will slowly start to build a culture of, appreciation, right? You appreciate a sincere apology. Or you appreciate a sincere sort of capitulation or a sincere acceptance of responsibility. Hey, look, I'm sorry. I messed this up. And then that appreciation starts for each other, right? And then you start addressing each other's grievances without any moral superiority or moral high ground or any scorekeeping. You can just do it objectively. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you felt that way. Emotionally focused therapy adds that these patterns come from sort of insecure attachment wounds of the past. But the real tough work here, and this is tough, is that you make your emotions, the primary emotions, the fear, loneliness, emptiness, shame, is that you open those up to your spouse. And now you're vulnerable. Nobody likes to feel vulnerable. But in that vulnerability, your partner will see or can possibly see that there's a level, because it takes a level of trust to be vulnerable with somebody. And then they can respond to these emotions in a thoughtful way versus an explosion of everything was fine and boom, everything's not fine. And then scorekeeping, blame. Give them an opportunity to think on a thing and respond to it in a thoughtful way. All the doctrine, all the medical, psychological doctrine, it's all crystal clear, people. Any sustained change, any permanent change in this negative dynamic that's going on requires both people to examine their own their own automatic default darkness and their exaggerated defense mechanisms and their manipulations, using emotions in a manipulative way as a weapon. You have to examine that first. You have to. And then just accept that you do contribute to the problem with the way you do these things, and that you need to recognize it and consider how you're going to change it. You cannot demand respect while giving disrespect, folks. I say again, you cannot demand respect while giving disrespect. Selfishness. Selfishness is human, folks. We're all human. We're all flawed. Every single one of us. And every single one of us are selfish to a degree. It's a survival mechanism. And I talk about rational self-interest all the time. I think rational self-interest is a positive force. Rational self-interest, it's a series of positive actions for yourself that, by helping yourself, helps those around you, not hurts. It's not rational self-interest to hurt other people. That's irrational. But selfishness and irrational self-interest, that prioritizes your own needs above all others, and then you downplay the negative impacts that you're having. Oh, it's not that bad. Oh, you're exaggerating. And then you defend your wrong negative actions as opposed to owning them. And then none of those selfish acts help anyone. They're negative. They don't help you. Yeah, that's right. Your selfishness does not help you. And look, these things can emerge to the surface for many reasons. Selfishness can come from many reasons. You have some unresolved issue, hurt, pain that happened 2 weeks ago or 10 years ago. You had poor examples of parenting skills. Your parents were all effed up. They did denial or blame. They did the same thing that you're doing now. Piss poor modeling. Or you simply lack life skills to solve these kind of complex relational problems. It's any of those things are reasons why you're selfish. But I'm going to tell you this right now. Reasons for doing wrong do not equate to excuses for doing wrong. You have no valid excuse. Reasons are not valid or invalid. They are just factors. An excuse is invalid. Yeah. And look, on selfishness, there's a very crucial distinction here. People capable, which we all are, of ordinary selfishness, we still possess, most likely, we possess the ability to have empathy, and we possess a sense of right or wrong. We may be selfish, but we have these in us, and we can learn to change, and we can feel remorse, empathy, sympathy. And when we see the real emotional toll that we may be compelled to change. And we can fight through the selfishness, and we can shape ourselves. That's selfishness. Well, on the other hand, narcissism, especially the pathological variants of narcissism, that's far more rigid and unforgiving, and you're chronically self-absorbed and self-obsessed even. And you have a complete lack of empathy and probably an inability to show empathy. It does not compute. You have a sense of entitlement. You exploit other people's emotions for your own gain. You say things like, I deserve XYZ, or you owe me XYZ. How dare you accuse me of XYZ? And the narcissist feels they don't feel your distress or your angst at their behavior. And furthermore, they want to use your emotions. They want that for control mechanism, because the narcissist seeks control rather than connection. There's no real connection. They just want to control the dynamic. And in the scenario of mutual harsh criticism without any ownership, it's more likely that the mutual selfishness is amplified by, our own pain or our own poor skill set, rather than full-blown narcissism. Chances are there is no narcissistic personality disorder, most likely. One or both of you may lean that way. And I'm not saying it isn't possible. I'm just saying most likely it's probably just selfish human nature, not narcissism. The distinction matters. Yeah, it does. The distinction matters. Ordinary human selfishness it's correctable. Yeah, it may be a long, hard fight, but it's correctable. A little self-awareness, a little thoughtful work, and a will to correct. But no shit, narcissism is way harder, if nearly impossible to correct. And if one is a narcissist and the other isn't, the other requires extremely strong boundaries, maybe even just divorce and cut away, as opposed to fruitless attempts to repair a thing that cannot be repaired. Relationships that have been saved, recovered, share a common process. And again, this is data from tens, even hundreds of thousands of humans, tens of thousands, scores of thousands of couples. Couples who recover from infidelity, affairs, substance addiction, etc. They first achieve their own individual stability, sobriety, or ending the secrets. And then they take on individually the structured work that emphasizes individual accountability. And long-term data from specialized affair recovery programs, again, involving tens of thousands of participants, show exponential and long-lasting reductions in anxiety and depression and PTSD symptoms, and that the improvement is it's a 2 and 3 year span of just getting better and better, right? The improvement is amazing. This is documented stuff. And there are a couple of very specific anecdotal accounts, but one husband had an opioid addiction and it nearly cost the marriage, right? And after treatment and 12-step program, and he took he swallowed a little bit of humility, and he took ownership of it. And ultimately, the couple ended up renewing their vows and bringing a new child into the world, because regular life problems seemed easy breezy. After solving the big problems, the regular life problems are easy. Another couple that went through intensive therapy after sex addiction and infidelity, years and years of it. After 5 years of this therapy, they're still being tracked, and they report back to these studies, genuine capacity for problem solving and relationship repair. Because again, once you've had the big nasty problem that nearly destroyed it all, the daily life problems are easy breezy. Even the tough problems are easy to solve. And what else does the studies show? People who are dependent on alcohol or substance abuse, who have supportive spouses, they come out exponentially, measurably better in couples cognitive behavioral therapy than in individual therapy alone, when you have a supportive spouse to help you through that problem. So all these common threads appear. The person with the bigger problem sought to correct it first on their individually, to take ownership of it. And both partners practice humility with each other instead of scorekeeping. And then going through some professional structured therapy, it kept the old darkness from creeping into the process. Therapy works, folks, in many, many, many cases if you're open to it. I know you think I'm all anti-therapy. I'm not. Failures follow the same trajectory except opposite. When criticism and contempt persist without any ownership, that resentment eventually hardens into hate. Ugly, bitter divorces leave children with extreme risks for emotional dysregulation, internalizing or externalizing emotional problems. And later on, you get substance abuse, inability to form any healthy relationships whatsoever, toxic stress on the HPA axis, the body's main hormonal stress management system, which when it's healthy is very adaptive. Humans are very adaptive, especially children. But when it's chronically overworked, it breaks down. And they also just they live out the model that they saw. It's long-term and like broad meta-analytical work directly links parental chaos and conflict before, during, or after a divorce to, adolescent alcohol use, cigarette use, drug use, adult depression, repressing and denying any responsibility. Sorry. Lower wage earning capacity as an adult. Higher incarceration rates as adults. Well, kids too, in that fact. Exponentially higher teen births. So you divorce your toxic spouse, let's say, all the while dodging and denying any responsibility for the core problems. Now you have young kids and no co-parent. And, well, you're lonely and you have needs, right? So the same dubious circumstances under which you two first met begin to emerge. So now, and this is documented, a revolving door of partners that follows a bitter divorce. It solidifies the model of instability, emotional chaos, and in many, many documented cases, it exposes children to further emotional and physical risk, folks, and just generalized confusion. So nothing is fixed. No problem has been solved. Only the faces and personalities have changed. Now you're just waiting on a new set of problems. And so the cycle continues. Correct yourself first, good people. All medical and psychological doctrine is unambiguous on the process. You cannot reliably change another person. You can only change yourself and your contributions to the destructive cycles. Cognitive behavioral therapy asks you to identify and test your automatic thoughts, those dark default thoughts that trigger criticism or defensiveness. And then attachment work tells us to examine our own working models, right? Let's look at what our parents were doing, and let's look at are we modeling that to our children. And then Gottman's methods tells us that we got to take responsibility, even just a small piece, if we want to start rebuilding our appreciation of one another. And Christian teachings concur with these methods, folks. And I'll tell you, here you go. Remove the log from your own eye first. That jives with all this stuff. And approaching your spouse a little bit softer. Hey, I see my part in what's happening here, and I'm going to do X, Y, Z to work on it. That creates safety, folks. That creates safety. If you approach from moral superiority, well, I'm a bigger victim. You're worse than I am. That leads to defense mode, and nothing's going to get done. You have to accept responsibility. Now this ain't self-blame theater. I'm not telling you to ham it up and you have to do some genuine self-reflection and self-work. That is the way. That is the path. And this is the only empirically supported start point that breaks the resentment, contempt, hatred chain. The cycle. Resentment leads to contempt. Contempt leads to hate. And you can't live in a relationship like that. Every critical comment, every blame without any self-ownership, every refusal to own alcohol or sexual choices or inappropriate conversations with quote-unquote friends, every score settling, every blame game argument creates more resentment, and it just depletes that relationship bank account. Every time you come at somebody thinking that you give more and they take more, well, both of you can't be right. And any potentially positive interaction just gets discounted. And any neutral interaction just is seen as a subtle attack or a passive-aggressive attack. And then the contempt settles in. And then you start to build a sense that the other person, your spouse, is beneath you. Because what is hate anyway? That's just contempt without any need or care for justification. I did what I did, deal with it. You don't give a shit. And every time you say, well, I don't care anymore, that's what you're saying. And at that point, well, the marriage is functionally over, even if the paperwork hasn't been filed yet. And so the cycle continues. So I'm going to draw you a bleak picture here real quick. What if the cycle continues unchecked? I mean, yes, divorce inevitably arrives under high conflict and bitterness for sure. Your children, already exposed to years of harsh criticism and alcohol volatility and neglect just from parental selfishness, now witnesses two households cursed with selfish hostilities. Their emotional regulation never fully develops. They learn that relationships equal chaos or withdrawal. And they learn that love is transactional and conditional. And then as they age a little into adolescence, that brings with it some self-medication from either alcohol or drugs so that they can suppress that inner pain and that inner noise that you never bothered to address. And that's the exact trajectory that researchers directly link to early toxic stress from this parental conflict. And then what happens? Well, unwanted pregnancies pop up. And what are those? What is unwanted? Why? That's because it's a desperate attempt to feel a connection, even though it's just physical. Or it's out of outright rebellion, one or the other. And then, estrangement from one or both parents is common, very common. It's documented, folks. I'm not making it up. And never mind as a spouse, but even as a parent, you are unwilling to take accountability. And you live in this selfish victim mentality. And your new relationships, they follow the same patterns anyway. The revolving door of sexual partners. They come into your house. Some of them are kind. Some of them are not. None of them are long term. And they just create further instability in your young, beautiful children. And in the worst documented cases, they inflict emotional and or physical abuse on a child. Young daughters particularly get sexually abused at many documented cases. Young boys, many documented cases of suffering physical abuse. And by the time these young, beautiful children, these young, innocent lives get to young adulthood, they have no relational skills whatsoever. Exceedingly high rates of substance abuse, depression, inability to form any kind of stable relationship or bonds with anyone. And your unresolved hate passes on down. Now it becomes a permanent family pattern. And so the cycle continues. Good people, this is not inevitable. It is all well documented. It's all deeply studied. This high risk path where bitterness and resentment and conflict is the dominant emotional climate is not inevitable. How do we reverse that bleakness? Well, the pattern can be stopped. It can be reversed. One or both of you in this relationship, in this toxic relationship, one or both of you stop waiting for the other to miraculously change and start your own miraculous change via deep self-examination, therapy, sobriety, honest inventory of your own selfishness. And then you do the deliberate daily acts of soft communication. And either with the help of Jesus Christ or through evidence-based tools or both, you change your perceived high ground. You swap that out for humility. And your spouse will eventually respond. And yeah, nothing's guaranteed. But documented recoveries show that the responses are overwhelmingly positive when the honest effort has been given, even if cautious at first. And maybe very slowly, but through consistent positive action, respect is earned. And again, maybe even very slowly, but shared values become clearer and chosen together rather than assumed. You choose together. You prioritize your children's emotional well-being together. And then your children witness this positive repair and this positive reconstruction instead of the endless shouting matches and me, nah. They see parents who can disagree without fighting, without contempt. They see parents who can take responsibility for their actions and who prioritize the family unit's emotional safety. And years later down the road, that family dynamic looks vastly different. Yeah, maybe still imperfect. And yes, still requiring ongoing maintenance efforts. But it's defined differently. It's defined by mutual regard for one another, by emotional regulation. And these kids can absorb all that. And a baseline of safety, both physical and emotional, exists. And that keeps them away from these cliche, bleak outcomes, these statistical cliches. Couples who have walked this path describe the rebuilt marriage that emerges from all the madness as being stronger than the one that existed before the breaking point. Exactly because it was rebuilt from the ground up on earned mutual respect and not built on, swiping right or some superficial mutual attraction or casual sex or booze and drugs. You have now built a full-fledged adult marriage with all the correct elements in place and functioning correctly. And so the cycle is broken. If this describes your situation, good people, I beseech you, I beg you, I implore you, examine yourself. Take accountability. Own what is yours, especially the bad. Seek out help, professional, spiritual, or both, that guide you to become the kind of person capable of giving and receiving deeper respect and deeper love. It is not too late. The cycle can be broken. That is the work. I'll leave you with this. As I quote this passage from W.B. Yeats, imagine your children are appealing this to you. But I, being poor, have only my dreams. I've spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams. Your children are watching you. Your children are watching you.